Dear friends, Peter Sam has been working on the Tylian Railway in Wales. The then controller's railway became so busy that he had to bring Peter Sam home to help. Sir Handel was jealous, but Peter Sam told us about the time he was ill while he was in Wales. It seemed too good a story to waste, so I decided to share it with you. I hope Peter Sam isn't too upset. The author. The island of Soldor has many tracks for the engines to run on from all sorts of directions. But once in a while, weeds would grow around them and they need to be stopped, so it doesn't collect serious rust and cause serious accidents. So there's a type of weed killer tanker that engines use to stop them from growing. But they have to go slow and steady so they can kill many weeds easily. Rusty was doing that on a narrow gauge railway one day, and he wasn't a fan of it at all.
Why do we have to do this on a summer day? It's too hot to do such a thing. I feel like my wheels are going to melt. I'm sorry, Rusty, but we have to do it. It's the Topham Hatt's order, you know. Right, I know that, but can we at least go a little bit faster to save some time? No can do. We have to go slow. Otherwise we won't get as many weeds as we need to.
Rusty didn't like that one bit, but he knows that it's just best to do what he's told, because that's one of the ways of being a really useful engine. Meanwhile, Rheneas was taking the passengers around the island. There were so many of them to take because it was a holiday weekend, but even Sir Topham Hatt didn't think there were going to be so many. Rheneas had to get a third coach just so the extras could climb in for a ride. He hadn't even started yet, and he already felt exhausted because of how heavy it was. When the guard blew his whistle, he immediately set off trying to make up for lost time from fetching the third coach. But even the station masters would understand why he was late.
I mustn't be late. I mustn't be late.
Everything was running nicely until he got to the middle station where Rusty was passing by. He came to a stop and whistled to him.
Hello, Rusty. Having fun with the weed killer, I see.
If only the weather wasn't so damn hot, then I wouldn't have any complaints about doing this.
Hey, at least you don't have to carry 3 heavy coaches in the heat. That's like twice as hard than what you're doing.
Ahead of him was a bridge that goes above a stream so the engines don't get wet. But today was difficult for Rheneas to even get over because the weed killer stuff was on the rails, other than the ground, so it was making them greasy and difficult. Rheneas tried to get across it, but it was hard for him and he couldn't struggle on the rails any longer, so he came to a stop and came back down at the bottom of the bridge. So his driver checked to see what was wrong with it.
The rails are slippery. That's why you're having trouble getting through the bridge. Plus, the third coach makes things more difficult for you. I'll just grab some sand close by and pour it over the rails, so it can be easier for you.
Bother that Rusty. If only he understood what he was really using on the rails.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean is, he isn't using weed killer, he's using speed killer.
His driver laughed and grabbed a bucket of sand and shoveled it all over the rails of the bridge.
All right, Rheneas, let's try going over the bridge again.
Rheneas replied with a whistle and took a deep breath.
Okay, Rheneas. You can do this.
And he started to move. He started to go slowly and carefully. Then he started to go a bit quicker when he got to the bridge. Everything went better than before, and made it to the other side of the bridge.
job, buddy. Now let's make up for lost time.
So they continued their run to the station. Rheneas was panting, but it wasn't going to slow him down. Every puff and breath he took made him feel like he was finally getting closer to the station.
I can do it! I can do it! Will the station ever come?
A little while later, they finally made it. He was breathless and proud of himself for not giving up his faith to get there.
At last! I made it!
The passengers thanked him and said they had a great time. They didn't even care that they were a bit late because they knew he did his best to make it no matter what time it was. That made Rheneas much better and knew he did the right thing.
I don't understand this. Why would Peter Sam go to Wales, leaving me to do his work? Who does he think he is?
Well, we're only one engine short until the new engine is built and ready to go, so don't go into your smoke box once again.
Sir Handel was furious to know that the new engine was still being built and Peter Sam left at such a bad timing. But thankfully, Peter Sam came back, so now he can do his jobs again. Or so Sir Handel thought. Sir Topham Hatt came to the sheds to talk to him.
I know that you've been very busy on both this railway and on the Tadaclyn Railway in Wales. So I'm giving you some time off, so you can rest your wheels and not overwork yourself or break down.
Gee, thank you, sir. I deserve a day off.
That made Sir Handel even more upset. When he was collecting the trucks he's supposed to take to the coal depot, he can see Peter Sam looking at him with a smirk on his face. That's when he snapped and caused trouble. The trucks were off the rails and Sir Handel broke something in him, but he didn't care about it.
Well, you're not going anywhere now. You broke your firebox, and there's no way your fireman can fix and the damage that big.
I'll show him.
Sir Handel was shunted into the sheds, and Peter Sam was asked to do the job instead, since all the other engines were busy. He didn't want to, but he knew that someone has to get it done and needs to continue being a really useful engine. Sir Handel thought he got away with it and will be fixed shortly, but he was wrong. The workmen never came to fix him. They were too busy working on the new engine. So days came and passed and a little dust landed on him as well. Now he feels like a silly little engine.
Maybe this wasn't a bright idea after all.
Just then, Sir Topham Hatt arrived in his blue car. Sir Handel was very surprised. He didn't expect to see him at all.
Sir, what are you doing here?
I thought it would be a good idea to stop by and check on you, Sir Handel. Sorry that you're not fixed yet. The workmen are just too busy working on the new engine to even put time into fixing you.
That's all right, sir. I'm the one who should be sorry.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
Well, I didn't cause the wreck by accident. I was just tired of doing all the work for him and hearing that he gets a day off, and that made me upset to the point that I thought it was a good idea to have him put those trucks instead of me. But now I can see how wrong I was and should have thought about how busy the workmen are. I'm very sorry, sir.
There was a long pause for the two of them. Sir Handel thought he was going to be shut down in the sheds forever, but Sir Topham Hatt took a deep breath and calmly talked to him.
I see. Well, I appreciate you telling me the truth, Sir Handel, but what you did was foolish and unthinkable. And you should have known better than what you did before. Thankfully, nobody was badly hurt from your wreck. I'm sure you put a lot of thought into your actions and learned your lesson. If I get few workmen to fix you, will you not do any more foolish events like that?
Yes, sir. I promise, sir.
All right, I trust you. But do it again and I'll think of something much worse to punish you.
After the workmen fixed Sir Handel, he worked super hard and made sure to be a useful engine. He apologized to Peter Sam and he was forgiven. Now he knows not to let his anger get the best of him. Otherwise, he would get himself into trouble again and go down the wrong path that might ruin his life. After Peter Sam came back from Wales, 2 girls were washing him down so he can be spotless again. Their names are Kathy and Lizzie. They were hot and bothered, but wanted to get paid for cleaning him. Peter Sam decided to tease them a little.
You know, Tally Lynn cleaned me up very well. If you want to be as good as them, then I would be extra clean to work on the railway again.
But the 2 girls didn't find that funny at all.
Excuse me? We're working as hard as we can, and if you don't like it, then we'll just leave.
Now hold on there. I was just teasing you. You're doing a great job, and I feel like I'm clean already. I'm sure one of the workmen will pay you well before you go back to Tally-Lynn with your parents. What I meant was that the water there got me wet because something was wrong with it.
They stopped at their tracks and started to listen, but they ended up chatting so much that Peter Sam couldn't even start his true story.
This better be good, because I'm not going to waste my time if this is a bad story.
Shh! Shelby, let him tell his story.
Sorry, but this engine already gave us a hard time today, and I won't let him do it again.
Are you two finished yet?
They stopped talking and stayed silent so he could talk.
Thank you. Now let me tell you what happened. It was a big day for me because I had to take a big express train, so I went to the water tower and my driver filled up my tank. However, as you two know, the water there isn't what it's like here.
Louie, how different is it?
Well, the water from your place has this weird white stuff in it to keep it moist. At first, I thought it was nice and felt good, but not until later that day, as the water started to taste awful and I hated it.
Did you go back for a refill to see if it happens again?
No, that would have taken too much time. I just continued on with my day. When I go to the station, that's when it got much worse as I started to have a boiler ache. I turned my crew right, but before they could do anything about it, my funnel started to feel weird as well. Before I even knew what was happening, all the wet water burst out of my funnel and landed all over me. I couldn't go any further. It got all sticky by the time Tally-Lynn took the express instead. I was happy that he was able to do it for me, but I was also embarrassed about what happened that day. Passengers would laugh at me when they passed by. The workmen cleaned all the white water off me all day, but on the positive note, they made sure that the white water was useful to use again after that, and there wasn't another problem like that again. And that's how I got wet with the water over there, so the way you two are cleaning me is much, much better.
The 2 girls couldn't help but laugh at his story and started to tease him back.
Now I remember. Father told us about that. Too bad we didn't take a pill to stop the boiler leak.
They don't need to take a pill, silly. It's Fireman should have been the one who was careful on what he's putting in him.
It must have taken the workman ages to get that stuff off him. I can't imagine how hot and sweaty they were.
Peter Sam didn't say anything. He realized how silly it was for him to tell them the story. I think he better be careful with who he's talking to. Don't you? It has been a few months since the workmen started working on the new engine, and now he's nearly complete. The narrow gauge engines couldn't wait to meet him. But the problem was that they didn't know what the name of the engine was. They were having their own guessing game on what it could be, but immediately started running out of ideas. Even Sir Topham Hatt couldn't give them the answer.
Oh, please, sir, do tell us his name. We're dying to know.
I'm sorry, guys, but I can't tell you until the party.
That made them even more anxious to know the one thing they really want. I vote you the chief engineer of the narrow gauge railway, didn't know the name either.
I'm sorry, guys, but not even I can tell you the name of the engine. They told me that they'll add the name to the last minute, so we'll all have to wait and see what it is at the party.
Bother! I was really hoping he was named after a place. Then everyone can go visit the place he's based on.
I'm afraid that we'll have to be patient. If we keep playing the guessing game, then the day might never come.
Grandpappy's right. I guess that means we'll just stay silent for a while. Maybe the day will come before we know it.
And indeed it did. Skarloey was chosen to pick up the passengers and guests to the party. Lizzie and Kathy washed him down, he coupled up to the coaches, and was off. When he made it to the station, everyone immediately climbed in. Even they were excited to see the new engine, and mostly his name. Ivo U was riding with him because he was chosen to reveal the name. When they were halfway to the party, Skarloey saw something in the middle of the tracks, so he screeched to a halt and was surprised at what he was seeing.
Holy snipes!
There in front of him were a herd of cows.
Come on, cows, off you go.
But the cows didn't move, they just stood there minding their own business. So his driver climbed down and tried to scare them away, but they didn't. Skarloey was getting more and more worried about not getting to the party on time.
This is going to take ages for these cows to even move out of the way.
Just then, he could see all the passengers and Ivo U getting out of the coaches and helping his driver. They shouted and whistled at them to move, and the cows finally got their attention and moved out of the way.
Finally, thank you everyone. And what's with cows staying in the middle of the tracks anyway?
Everyone climbed back into the coaches, and Skarloey continued his journey to the party. Meanwhile, everything was set and was waiting for Skarloey and the crew to arrive. The narrow gauge engines and the new engine were talking to each other, but even he couldn't tell them his name, so that made them even more anxious. But Rheneas was starting to get worried and talked to Duke.
I'm starting to worry about Skarloey, Duke. I wonder where he could be.
Don't worry, Rheneas. Just give him a little more time and he'll probably show up. And he was right. Skarloey finally made it to the party, and all the engines were pleased to see that he made it in one piece. All the passengers climbed out, and Ivo U was the last to walk out of the coaches.
I'm very sorry, sir. We were stopped by some cows on the line, so we had to go through the trouble of moving them.
That's alright, you're still on time, and I'm glad you're okay. Now, let's show everyone the new name. I don't think the engines can wait much longer.
Ivo U agreed, stood next to the engine, and got everyone's attention.
We've been working on this engine for a while now, and happy that we finally got him done. This railway doesn't have as many engines as the standard gauge railway does, so it was for the best to work on another engine to help around on this railway. The only problem is, though, most of us don't know the name of this engine. They didn't even bother telling me, so I don't know the name either. So let's see what name is under these covers, shall we?
Everyone said yes, so Ivo U pulled the covers off the engine, and everyone was surprised to see the name, including Ivo U.
Oh my, I don't know what to say. You didn't have to do that, sir, but thank you.
No, thank you for making sure these engines work like clockwork and fixing them whenever needed. So I think this engine deserves this name.
Ivo U strongly agreed and introduced everyone to the new engine.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the new engine's name, Ivo U.
The audience cheered and the engines blew their whistles as loud as they could. I believe the engine was very happy to work for the narrow gauge railway and be a really useful engine just like them. But I'm sure he'll need to start for the little things first before he goes to the higher spot. Don't you?